Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by Las Vegas Motor Speedway, America's racing showplace.
I said I wasn't going to go racing. Mac Martin said, if you're not going to be my crew chief, I'm going to shut the doors down. Yep, he walked over, looked in the car, said he'd drive it. He said, reached in his pocket, pulled out this little cigarette lighter, the old school push button lighter with two wires hanging out of it, and asked if I'd put it in the dash. People ask me all the time about who the best people, drivers I work with or whatever. And, I work with Mark Martin. Obviously, that's an easy one. Ernie Irvin, that's an easy one. The one that people won't know is how good that kid was going to be. Jay Nadeau.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future.
1992, you won the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
How big a deal was that to you?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome.
Or was that just another race?
It kind of... At that time, it was almost like another race.
Yeah.
And only because, there's, so many good things were happening all the time. You're like, it wasn't that race. It was what's going to be the next race.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Had that feeling. And that was that was really cool. I'll a quick story, I'll never forget, we were walking through the garage area. We totally rebuilt the front end of that car, that morning of the Daytona 500. I remember walking across the garage area, holding the center link and the tie rods and the steering arm, and just hauling it across the garage and to bolt on completely different things on the car. And then you just go that's not signs of a good day. You're looking at if you saw that as a competitor, you'd be like, oh,
meat.
Yeah, they're done. Yeah. Right? That would be what that would equate to. And then you go win the race. That's kind of like saying what's next? That whole season was like that.
Well, what could happen next in 1992? I'm going to be honest with you. I think somebody should write a book about Robert Yates Racing, 1992, 3 and 4.
Yeah.
You were there for 92.
Mm-hmm.
What? How did you manage to keep going despite everything that happened? I mean, Davey got hurt at Bristol. He got hurt at he got hurt everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know if he ever got healed back up.
He got hurt to Winston. Pocono. So
that Pocono one was, that whole week I think we came back at Talladega the following week. All those couple weeks there were unbelievable.
What do you remember about the wreck? Obviously, you couldn't see it.
No, we couldn't see it. Yeah, TVs weren't like they are these days. It's kind of like, there's a lot of wrecks that happened back then. Guys just didn't get hurt a whole lot, right? They probably did, and we didn't know it, right? And we can talk about some other things when drivers got hurt and they keep racing and we don't know it until too late, right?
Yeah.
But that whole race, he wrecked, and then you realize, okay, they had to. He's in the hospital, right? We clean up our stuff, and we go to the hospital afterwards, and it was one of the craziest things, and it's kind of like my memory of Davey and how cool he was and how funny he was. And we go to the hospital, we're waiting, Nish Lake, Joey Knuckles, Raymond Fox, myself, Larry, Doug. I don't know if Doug was there. Robert, for sure. And we're kind of waiting to get an update. And they came out and said, "Hey, you guys want you want to go back and see him?" I'm like, I don't know if I want to go back to see him,
Yeah.
And so So a couple people will go in, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple of guys go in because there's a small room. Maybe it was, Larry and Robert. And so I think it's just Raymond and myself and maybe even Larry sitting in the waiting room. And they tell us we can go back and see him. So we're walking through the hall, and we're kind of looking in one room, the next room, trying to figure out where he might be. We walk past this door, and I look in. I go, well, that's, obviously not him. I kept going, and I hear him. He said, Raymond. And I was looking around like, where'd that come from? Like, that's not the guy that.
Yeah. Wow.
His face was so swollen. He looked like a 300-pound guy, and he's just Davey might have been 90 pounds, right? He's a skinny little guy.
Yeah.
And his mustache was sticking straight out, like because he was swelled up. I didn't recognize him. Obviously, we recognized his voice, and he was like, "Hey, man, come in." Like, if you didn't see him and you only listened to him, you go, "Hey, he's good to go," And his eyes were red, but not like, they eventually got really red.
Yeah.
So that whole team's been through so much at that point in time, even up until then. And then, you kind of go back like, okay, regroup. What's going to happen next, right? And then he says he wants to run. We did the old Talladega thing, which I think is well documented. And people, we can go through that if you want. You tape him in the car and Velcro, and he gets in and gets back out. Bobby Hillen drove the first part of it, and Davey gets in, out. That's just real crazy stuff. There was so much crazy stuff happening back then, and it just wide open. Like, that was kind of the norm. You know what I mean? It's kind of just seemed like back then that maybe it's more just for us, but as Yates in particular. But in racing in general, there was so much stuff going on that's just the level of excitement that was going on in the sport back then.
Then Clifford got killed in August.
Mm-hmm.
Then you won at Phoenix. You go into the last race of the year at Atlanta as the point leader.
Mm-hmm.
Were you counting your championship money?
No, I was not. I was not. I just felt like, I like other sports, and I just felt like that you're in the game. It's late in the fourth quarter, and you got a little lead. Like, it's time to execute. That's kind of how I felt. It's kind of, I always felt kind of like that my whole career. Like, when it's time to do it. So, but there was a lot of stuff going on. We had lots of things to overcome, and we'd overcome them, and that's just what you did. And I think it was probably different for me than it was to other guys, for sure.
Did you see the accident with Ernie?
No. Back then it was hard to even watch the race. I mean, especially doing the things I was doing. It's like there's no time to even look up.
Okay.
Sometimes I had to go over the pit wall and go ask me, hey, what's going on? And then you go back to work.
Now you wound up at Kyle Petty's team Sabco, Felix Sabatis, in '93. How did that come about?
At that point in time, I was wanting to probably have more responsibilities than what I was doing at Yates. I was a mechanic. I did almost all the front suspension every week. I helped set up the cars. Not a lot, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be more involved with that kind of thing.
Were you already thinking crew chief, or did that come later?
No. I was I still didn't think I was even close to that, but I wanted more opportunity to do different things. Robin had position open at Sabco. And at that time, Felix was a good guy. Kyle was a good guy. They're having a riot. They're having fun.
Yeah.
And it looked like a great place to go. And an opportunity for me to do have more responsibility.
Yeah.
And so it looked like a big time and more responsibility.
Yeah.
Felix was, pretty flamboyant at the time, and just like something like, hey, this is what I want to do, and so that's how I got to Petty's, to Felix's.
All right.
And working with Kyle was, it was a riot, right?
Yeah.
Davey was funny, and Kyle was equally funny in a completely different way. If that makes sense. So, but it was a good time.
You want to take a break? Or
Okay. Whatever you want to do.
All right. So again, tell me a good Kyle Petty story. What was it like to work with Kyle Petty during the Yanni days?
Well, he definitely was taking the sport in a different direction. I mean, he was really leading. The character, the popularity portion of the sport. I mean, he was doing it in a different way than, a Dale Earnhardt Sr. was doing it, or Rusty was doing it. Like completely, his character, I say character, but I guess you could call it character. His personality. It was just, for a while there, it was just a damn riot to be around him. He was fun, relaxed, and could go fast.
Yeah.
Which, usually that was probably a unique blend back then. But I think some of the funniest stuff was probably when he did there's a little video he did, the Hey Buddy tour, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And and he traveled around and with his camera. We went up to, I don't know, we went testing, went to New Hampshire. We did all kinds of fun things, and he had this camera around wherever he went. And he was pretty confident and relaxed back then, which some of these things that you see, you didn't know it then. You know it now, right? Because you're like, oh, that was when somebody's got a lot of confidence and feeling good about things. We go and win Pocono by, I don't know how much, a half a lap, maybe more. And he was just rolling, talking all the way down the front straightaway, telling stories every time he comes by. I mean, literally, that's how cool he was. And just checked out was, several tenths faster than second place. And he gets out of the car with his video camera and he's doing that thing. So that's not the funny story. That's not the cool story. It's in general, that's the cool story.
Okay,
like that's just kind of the cool things that to see it all, be able to pull all that together. You don't know where he's at. He's gone riding his Harley and he shows up and gets in the car.
Yeah.
And does his thing. It's pretty cool.
Was Robin there?
Yep.
At that time?
He was the crew chief.
Was he the one that hired you?
Yes.
Okay. So did you feel ready to work for him again?
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt at that time that I knew what I was doing, and I could be I would never have gone back there if I didn't think it couldn't be a huge asset to him.
Okay.
Right? I wouldn't do that to my brother. I realized that I have acquired enough skills and confident in enough of them that I could go be significant to them. So that's why I went there.
All right. So you worked there in 93, 94?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you moved over to become Larry Pearson's crew chief.
That was right.
In the Busch Series. I talked to Larry a year or so ago for the podcast, and he told me a great story about how David would spot for him.
Uh-huh.
And David would get to giving too many instructions, and so Larry would give him a dead radio.
I have heard that story.
Okay.
And I believe all of it. Yeah. Larry was a good guy. We we had some fun. Ran well. Won a few races. Yeah, it was good times.
Okay.
It was my first chance to be a crew chief. So I think that was like 95, if I'm not mistaken. Worked really hard, and really, really, really hard over the winter to get ready for the season, and I think that really paid off for us going forward. We started off the season pretty well, and back then that was really tough because there wasn't a limit on Cup drivers driving in the Busch Series, so you had to put up with Rusty, Terry, Mark.
Yeah.
Of course, Mark. You had to put up with him, right? Those are the guys that would go. You got to beat those guys. On top of being a small Busch team back then, you had to beat some of the best in the world. So that was good times. We were well prepared that year, and had a good season. So let's go.
Was the job of crew chief better than you expected, worse than you expected, or pretty much on the mark?
All of it. All of it. There's so many different, facets to it. I like to talk about sports a lot, being a team player, a leader, that type thing. And that's, that plays part in motorsports as much as any other sport. Like it's hard to explain, even though it's a mechanical, it's a physical, but being able to lead and help people grow and build a program. I mean, that's I think that's all the great parts about being a crew chief. Being able to do all those things and competing, right? So.
You went to the Busch Series when you worked with Larry. Did you see that as any kind of demotion, or was it what you thought you needed to do in order to become a crew chief?
Yeah, I thought that's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
I needed to, to be able to lead. I mean, everybody can't be leaders, right, on your team, right? And I think that was just a good opportunity for me to, to lead, to be able to almost test yourself, really. I mean, it's hard to say that. Like, how do you test yourself? Yeah. It's easier to do in other sports, right? You can say how fast you run, how high you can jump, but doing it in racing, like you gotta be able to do it, and I think those are the things that you want to test yourself, see if you can kind of. If you're good at it, and I think that's what that was. That whole 2 years was that.
How did you wind up over at MB2?
So
now, were you the crew chief when you went over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the MB. So it was when I got an opportunity to start MB2 racing. It was Jay Fry contacted me, and there was this Morton, Beard, and Bowers, MB2 is how it was called, wanted to start a race team. They had connections with Mr. Hendrick, and so they wanted to start this race team. Jay Fry contacted me, asked me if I'd be interested, and we talked through it for a while, and decided that that's what I was going to do. And we were going to start the season. I don't even think we had a driver named yet, but I told Mac Martin, who was the owner of the Stanley Tools team with Larry, I told him that, hey, at the end of the season, next year I'm going to be going Cup racing. And we had just built a new building in Mooresville, North Carolina, right around the corner.
Mac
Martin, yep.
Yeah. And
just built a new building, a new shop. It was probably not even a year old. It was a great shop for Busch Series racing. It was a great shop. And I said I wasn't going to go racing Mac Martin said, if you're not going to be my crew chief, I'm going to shut the doors down. And
did he really?
And I said, hey, I'll help you. I'll go, finish out the year.
Yeah.
And help you out that way. So I did that, and knowing I was going to do something else. But we didn't have a building yet. We didn't have people. We had nothing. It was Jay Fry, the owner group, and myself. And at the last minute, I was loading up my toolbox with no place to go, starting this new team. Didn't know where we were going. And Mac Martin said he would lease me the building if we wanted to start a race, put a race team there.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, if you're sure you're not going to go racing, we'd love to start our race team here. And that's what we did. So built this building, went bush racing, transferred it over to MB2 Motorsports, and that's where we started. And took all the people with me. So the Stanley Tools team, Mac Martin's team, the 5 or 6 guys that I had, we all just moved right into the Cup Series. So it was that part of the transition was kind of cool to be able to bring all those guys with you.
So Ernie obviously had been hurt in '94, and he made just a spectacular comeback. But then at Michigan again, he gets hurt again, driving a bush car, practicing a bush car.
Yep.
What do you remember about that day? Now, was he in your car at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
As fast as news like that travels, it still didn't travel as fast as you think as it does these days, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
So you hear about it, you don't know how bad he's hurt, what the significance of it was. Like, those things you didn't know until you go physically talk to him or see him,
Yeah.
But as a job as a crew chief, that's not my, hey, this guy got hurt. I got to make a plan right away. And, got a race team to run. I got, so I hate to sound cold like that, but that's just how that was. You go to the next, hey, the driver's hurt. You got to get another driver. You got to do whatever you can. We got Dick Trickle to drive that weekend. And so, yeah.
You're okay.
Yeah. So that was a great experience, and I could share that experience with you, but it's exactly the same as everybody else has ever worked with Dick. It's the coolest thing. He does this thing. He wanted to put the cigarette lighter in the car and go
Did
race.
you?
Yep.
You put the cigarette lighter.
Yep. He walked over, looked in the car, said he'd drive it. He said, reached in his pocket, pulled out this little cigarette lighter, the old school push button lighter with 2 wires hanging out of it, and asked if I'd put it in the dash. And I was like, that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Yep.
That was his negotiating tactic.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, that's awesome to have guys, that's how that was back then, these older veteran guys. I mean, it was literally not much of a question. You go, hey, Dick, Ernie's hurt. We don't know if he's going to be able to go. Would you go? And you're like, yeah, okay. And then you go do it.
Yeah.
It's much more complicated these days, but yeah, it was that happened that quick. Yeah.
Wow. So you go to Richmond with Jerry Nadeau.
Yeah.
Take me through that day.
Well, so in general, we're really running well. The stats probably don't show it, but the speeds there, we're being competitive. Obviously there's still the Roush and Childress and Yates and or Kendrick, you got those are the teams you got to be, Rusty and those guys. But we were just right there where we're being competitive every week and feel like it's just a matter of time before we really start having some really good things happen for us. So, yeah, we had a lot of confidence going into Richmond, or at that time, and so we go practice, and back then we practiced multiple times a day, right? Probably 4 or 5 different practice sessions in a weekend.
Yeah,
at least 3. So we go out and practice, and we're really good, and we're one of the fastest cars there. I'd like to think we were probably the fastest car there at the time. Rusty Wallace that was kind of his track, right?
Yeah.
Rusty was always really good at Richmond, and so we go out and practice. We just blew Rusty's doors off in practice, like made him pit, right? He's going to pit, put another set of tires on type. We were feeling really good about things. So Jerry pulls in the garage. We talk for a minute, and I ask him regular questions. How's this? How's that? And he says, good. Everything's good. And there's still like 30 minutes left in practice. And he's like, nope, we're good. And at that time, as confident as we were in how we were doing, we weren't confident enough to park it. We weren't that. If Rusty or Mark or somebody like that parks the car with 15 minutes left in practice, it's because they could, right?
yeah,
We couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. That would look really bad on us if we just decided we were so good we didn't need to finish out the practice session. So I asked him to go out and run 10 more laps and give me a tire sheet. And we'll just kind of finish out the practice session. And he goes out there, and probably lap 6, he spins out, hits the wall. And that was a bad day. That was a bad day. I don't know. People ask me all the time about who the best people are, drivers I work with or whatever. And, I work with Mark Martin. Obviously, that's an easy one. Ernie Irvin, that's an easy one. The one that people won't know is how good that kid was going to be, Jay Nadeau. And he didn't get a chance to finish it out, So I still talk to him every now and then. He's doing great, but, yeah, that was a sad day.
How hard was that for you to process?
Yeah, that was really hard. Harder than any of the other ones. And we just got to have a really good relationship. He was great to be around. He could go fast. Yeah, like it was just, I felt like we were kind of growing up together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're still relatively the younger guys out in the garage area, that type thing. So, yeah, that one was tough. And so we wreck, had to bring out a backup car. You don't know really about his status. Don't know. You can tell that it's not great,
yeah.
right? But we got to get ready to race, right? So look around, try to find somebody I can put in the car, and put Jason Leffler in the car. Not Jason Leffler, Jason Keller, excuse me.
Yeah.
Put Jason Keller in the car, and because he was going to go cup racing the next year, I believe, or that he was contemplating that, and had to find somebody from the Busch Series, obviously.
Yeah.
So we get him an opportunity to race, but it was a hard one to race when you know that your driver and your buddy was not in great condition.